Yes, it would have been nice. It would have been nice to have had that, but something happens when your dad tells you at 18 that you're on your own, and then you intend to honor that. You got to kind of do the best you can. I've reported my evidence concerning the delivery of two V-22 Ospreys to Japan. It was a very specific time. There had been some outlays that had been authorized, which have a time frame. There had also been some concerns specifically about the V-22 Osprey. Why? Well, as I have mentioned before to those in the know, when I was in high school aboard Quantico Marine Base, one day we were at school and we got a notice over the intercom that we were going to be going home early. That there had been an accident, or rather, there had been an incident on the base, and so we were going to be sent home early. My understanding is the reason this happened is because in school with us was a young boy, a young man. His father was on a V 22 Osprey that went down when it was doing a training mission. Now, for those in the know, the development of the tilt rotor plane system in the United States had some concerns. See, if you grew up in the Marine Corps, you knew about the Harrier, and you knew about its capacity for vertical takeoff, and you also knew about its capacity to address a factor in a context where there's a very, very, very narrow runway, right? And so this was just kind of understood. The Marine Corps had the Harrier. Not a lot of aircraft were specific to the Marine Corps. A lot of times it was Navy, and you might have some Marine Corps pilots that made the crossover. Because it's very specific, very distinct. There's a lot more interest for specific reasons of why would the Osprey be considered to be specifically for Marine Corps. At least this is how it was back then, right? This is the kind of stuff in your environment influences you to think about. So one of them goes down. There's a number of people on the plane when it goes down. One of them happens to be the father of a young man you go to school with. He took the day off as a sign of respect, right? Well, years later, I'm reading through all these reports, so called training incidents involving active duty military personnel that go down. Apparently, at some point, there was actually a congressional inquiry into a specific incident alleged to be a training incident. There were even members of the military, very high up in the military, members of Congress, actual members of Congress, senators from the state of concern, where the base was located, where this occurred, trying to get information, but it got closed up real quick. Inquiry over. This is around the time I was looking at the names of members of the American military that went down in alleged aircraft incidents in Iraq. There's a very, very specific representation of family classifications that have been alleged to have been involved in aerial mishaps, including in war zones, but also in a time of peace within the United States. So when I saw these two Ospreys being sent to Japan, I said, this is very important. It came up around a time of a very significant anniversary, right? You know what I found out after that? Do you know the President of the United States has a fleet of V 22 Ospreys? See, the thing about the Osprey is it's primarily associated with the Marine Corps. And it's the Marine Corps that provides guard duty specifically for facilities where the president would be in attendance and for embassies abroad. Whatever else you might want to think, that's a very important honor, duty. It's also a very important breach of trust when you screw with it, right? During 2017, the publicly accessible information regarding that incident at Quantico Marine Base said that there were 13 individuals that were killed as a result of that incident. It also said in information that was assembled, mind you, some people have contested the source and also its policy of providing reference points for identification of the sources for its information. It said that there were witnesses, congressional witnesses, I understood at the time intrinsically what the implication was. At some point, you stop bearing witness. And if you don't testify, you become the culprit. There are all kinds of processes and strategies for recruitment, including recruitment into terrorist organizations, including recruitment into organized crime operations, right? What's the difference between one and another? Well, a lot of that is going to say something about the content of your character and how you apply it, right? More than enough time has passed. As a matter of fact, according to the specific standards that were put into effect by the President of the United States at the time of this incident, the time frame during which any report on that incident would have been considered classified for national security purposes has passed. Nobody had any right to try to, among other things, use this alleged COVID 19 situation to try to intentionally abrogate policy around public release of information, including in regards to incidents that may, for whatever reason, be determined to be available for national security purposes as confidential or classified. Because what it seems like is that president put into place a policy altering or changing terms and circumstances under which very important information could be identified as classified for national security purposes just long enough to set up a global terrorist attack in concert with others so that when that time frame passes, it can then become exclusively available to select individuals for purposes it had no legitimate right to be engaged in. See, if you intentionally classify information and say it's national security, and then you contrive and conspire to terrorize your own people and undermine the effective administration of your own government so you can sell it off to create personal advantage, well, I think a just cause claim can be made to argue that you never entered that office to begin with in good faith, that you intentionally sought political office with the intent to deceive and defraud the people and sabotage the government of the people. You were just a representative. All of you are just representatives. The question becomes of whom? As I have said before, while the 25-year term has not yet expired in regards to the request for a release of information concerning the closed door session in summer of 2000 regarding alleged recruitment for intelligence activities concerning policy changes implemented during the alleged Clinton administration, the time frame regarding classification of anything that went into the investigation of that Osprey crash at Quantico Marine Base has passed. It's been more than 25 years. We're due. We're due for that and a lot of other information, including information regarding anything that would have been classified concerning negotiations, discussions, debates, or extortions involving gays in the military, and matters related to the decommissioning of military facilities, including military facilities that provided accommodation for the families and members of the active duty military that began in the 80s and were ongoing at the time during which that crash occurred, as well as after. Am I incorrect? No, I'm not. And the thing is, the thing about a state of emergency is that rules and laws concerning emergency powers, as well as the effective implementation of any sort of military support structures, are supposed to be applicable during an emergency no matter what it is. So you don't get to say, well, I'm sorry, we can't do that. It's an emergency. The whole point is it's an emergency and you're supposed to be ready. If you're not ready, then what are you doing?